Geek to me radio, da 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 da. Domo arigato, geek to me radio, da 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 da. Welcome, geeks and nerds, girls and boys, to another episode of Geek to Me Radio. Tonight, we have writer and director Jonathan Bowen joining us to talk about his show, The Comic Shop, with people like Jesse Metcalfe, Eric Roberts, and Tristan Mays. After that, we've got production designer Dave Blass on to talk about that awesome new Star Trek short, Unification, from Otoy. All that and more, stand by. We're talking TV, comics and movies, and video games. And if you don't know Star Trek from Star Wars, we'll try to explain. There are 12 doctors for Hogwarts houses, one ring rules them all. To be the greatest Pokemon master, you must catch them all. You must catch them all. Try to catch them all. Gotta catch them all. Gotta catch them all. And for those of you joining us on the airwaves here on KTRS, thank you for tuning in tonight and listening. If you are streaming us on YouTube and Facebook, hello to all of you out there who might be watching. If you're hearing us streaming on the app, either the KTRS app or online from wherever you might be streaming, hello to all of you. And of course, as always, if you're hearing us after the fact in the podcast form on whatever platform you might be listening to us there, we do appreciate you finding us there and listening each week. You are missing something by not joining us live, but I'll allow it. I appreciate everyone listening, no matter how they do it or where they are. Joey V, my executive producer, is in studio with me tonight, which is why we've got video. And he pointed out, I've already made my first mistake of the night. For those of you keeping track at home, I'm only allowed the one. I said TV show for some reason. Jonathan Bowen, who's joining us, is the writer and director of The Comic Shop, the movie. So that's my mistake. Jonathan, thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Yeah. So that's, keep me honest. That'll be my only mistake. If I do anything else, just turn your mic off and leave. That's what I deserve. So no, I love the idea, the premise, obviously, because I'm a huge comic book nerd, have been since junior high. The people who are in this, we've had Tristan Mays and Eric Roberts on the show before.
Cool.
So it's this cast you've got's amazing. I love the story behind it. Talk a little bit, if you would, about how the genesis of this idea for this movie formed in your head.
Yeah, sure. So when I was a kid, I was really into comics and kind of started with Marvel and DC. I love the comic cards as well. And gradually it grew to like image comic. So Spawn and all that kind of stuff. And so I got over comics after a while, but every other nerd thing, video games. So as I was kind of thinking in comic shops, owned my local comic shop years for all this. Also Magic the Gathering back in the day.
Magic the Gathering, it's one of the things I never got into the Magic the Gathering for some reason. I don't know what it was intimidating, I guess. I'm having a little bit of chop on your audio, so I didn't mean to interrupt, but there's just a little bit of breakup and lag. So what we're going to do very quickly to fix this, I'm going to take a real quick commercial break, and that way we can double check the audio on my end, and worst case scenario, we'll pipe you in over the phone and keep the video. So stand by just one moment. We're going to take a brief commercial break, and we'll come right back with audio issues fixed. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio on the Big 550 KTRS. Please stand by.
Sold separately from Legos.
Switch on Chargertron, robots like you've never seen. Switch on Chargertron, supersonic machines. Rev the meter till it's red. Launch out the tracker. Switch on Chargertron, now it's an attacker. Switch on Chargertron, always changing, rearranging. He's surprising. He's disguising. Chargertron.
Chargertron. There's Protagatron and Antagatron, each sold separately from Buddy L.
Earth's most powerful soldiers fight the spiral zone.
Gentlemen, in an effort to crush the zone, Dirt Courage commands the most powerful machines on Earth, the Rimfire Cannon. And the Zone Rider Cycle. Only their awesome power can defeat the evil Overlord's Bullwhip Cannon.
Have a nice trip.
And monstrous sledgehammer tanks.
Fight the zone.
sold separately, new from Tonka.
The Saga of Crystar, a fantasy world of crystal warriors, demons, and wizards. Good wizards like Ogiodi, evil wizards like Sarda, and underworld demons like Moltar.
They've captured Ogiodi!
Each figure with a crystal prism that makes everything look like this.
Goodness and right, evil and might, the winner is out to you!
The Saga of Crystar collection. Each figure sold separately by Remco.
Moving out! Up and hills, down and dales as we...
Hello, nurses. This is Wacko of the Animaniacs, and you're listening to Geek to Me Radio. And do you know why? Because you know what's Fabu.
We think we went ahead and did it on the phone. We had to do this once before, so we kind of, at least we know what to do and how we're dealing with it. But we're going to go to the phone line right now. We do have Jonathan on the phone with us. Can you hear me now, as the saying used to be?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Perfect.
Is it coming through okay?
Yeah, it just sounds just fine. Yeah, so I had to interrupt your story. I'm so sorry. So you were talking about DC and Marvel, and you had the cards, and you said you were kind of getting into Image Comics, and that's when I broke you off with Magic the Gathering. So please continue.
Yeah. So I knew this guy owned the store, and as the years went on, he kind of was there, less and less, and he kind of was across the street. Eventually, one of his employees kind of threw him under the bus and said he was drinking across the street. Keep in mind, it's like 3 p.m.,
Yeah. Ugh.
So eventually the store closed, and I heard from one of the rivals that, I went to numerous shops, because one shop doesn't always have everything, right?
Right, exactly.
And somebody said, last I heard he's driving for UPS. So as an adult, I just was thinking back to these times, like good times, loved the comics. My mom would always take me, good times with her too. And I thought, what if I wrote Mike the happy ending that he didn't get in real life? And then what if I made a fictional version of this where it's like there's essences of the character, but I combine that into this fictional world. And I also put a lot of myself in it, because in my story, I made it that Mike didn't really want to own a comic shop. Mike really wanted to be a comic illustrator. He wanted to be the one actually creating the work. So for me, I was sitting there, in my mid-30s at the time, or sort of towards late 30s, doing corporate video work, like senior living videos, training videos, kind of boring stuff.
Right.
That wasn't really my plan A either. I wanted to be, a feature filmmaker. And I had done one feature in my 20s and just didn't have the opportunity to go do it again. So I put a little bit of myself into it, where maybe the comic store owner has bigger dreams, and that's why he's not really, his heart isn't in it. Mm-hmm. And so then you have this amalgamation of a character that's part me, part the real life comic store owner, and a lot of fiction.
And so the casting process, I don't want to get into all the financials to find out how it was funded. You guys do Kickstarters, but I want to kind of talk about the casting, because like we mentioned at the beginning when we introduced you, fantastic cast. What was that process like, and how did each person get attached?
Yeah, so the real linchpin, is your lead actor. Like, who's going to play Mike? He's so essential to the movie. And having done a movie the first time out, that we really didn't have the names. Like, we pretty much had no names. And I knew the response I got was so disheartening, because it was always stuff like Showtime, HBO, all these major places said, we like the movie. There's no one in it. So I don't know what you want us to do for you. And I'm like, well, if it's good and you like it, put it out.
Right, yeah.
And, their attitude was like, we can't really promote this because there's really not anyone in it. So I thought, I'm not making that mistake again. And I had 12 years to think about it, which is a long time.
Right.
So we went through a list of talking with the distributor, who checks your boxes? Who's somebody that you would consider somebody we can get this budget back, which is modest, but it's just over $1 million. So it's not a tiny $70,000 thing. We're spending some real money, and we got to have some sort of idea that we can get it back. So we went through some names, and I won't mention them all, but Justin Long was the first one we reached out to. And it wasn't that he passed. He just gave us an amount of money that would have eaten basically most of the budget.
Right.
And I don't blame him, because then he was in Barbarian not that Far Later, which I thought was a great little horror. And so I thought, oh, he probably knew I'm going to blow up after Barbarian. It was good. So then we kind of worked our way down the list a bit. And this was not in any sort of order. It wasn't like, just because we offered somebody fifth doesn't mean that I thought they were the fifth best. We just hadn't come up with them all. And it was kind of like each time, like, we're brainstorming, every single no we get, then it's a new brainstorming session of like, who's going to be there. And so Jesse's name came out, Jesse Metcalfe. And, you know, we made the offer, and I don't remember how long we waited. I don't think it was super long. I think it was a couple of weeks, though. And I remember I'm not a morning person, full disclosure. So my producers woke me up at like 8 a.m. or so, and I have them on the Pierce Do Not Disturb, because anything they have to say is going to be important.
Right.
So they're like, hey, buddy, how's it going? We're making a movie. And I'm like, we are? Like, yeah, Jesse Metcalfe said yes. And I was excited, but I'm also tired. So I was like, oh, wow, cool. But I'm also processing what that means, which is heading right into 12-hour days of pre-production immediately, like effective the second.
Right.
So then the rest of the cast, you know, it's like, well, we need a good lead actress. And we didn't make as many offers there. A couple names came up that I was not as excited about, and we offered one of them, I think. And then I kind of asked the producers, I said, hey, you know, this seems maybe out of the blue. I don't know. Maybe we can't afford her. I don't really know. You guys know what this costs. But have you heard of Tristan Mays? She's like the lead in MacGyver. And one of the producers was like, yeah, Tristan's really good. Yeah, you know, I know who she is. And he said, well, she was so good in that show, and she is so much like the character that we actually are casting, that I know she can nail the role, because she's got that same sort of feistiness and that sort of tomboy energy, but she's very pretty. And so we made her the offer, and I think she accepted in 48 hours.
Oh, wow.
It was really quick, and I was very excited. I had spent a lot of time in the pandemic actually watching the rerun of MacGyver, because I was a huge original MacGyver fan. I kind of put it off. You know how it goes. Nothing can beat the original.
Right,
so I put it off. And so then I have nothing else to do. We're like middle of the pandemic, and I'm just streaming these episodes late at night, thinking to myself, like, man, I wish I could make another movie again. And that's what made it so cool for Tristan to say yes, because that was like the darkest time where I was like, are we ever going to like be able to do anything again?
No kidding.
For it to all come together that way and work with her was kind of surreal and really a lot of fun.
And what about Eric Roberts? Because I know the man does like 10 movies a year. It's insane. He's always working. How did he get attached?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I actually almost wanted to silence my phone for that, because I had the IMDb notifications on whenever he's attached to something.
Right.
And some days, I'm not joking, I've seen a day where he was attached to 3 movies on the same day. And I'm like, okay, my phone's blowing up with Eric, like, working everything, you know?
Right.
So I think it was our casting director said, or I can't remember if it came through her or her to the producer, but said, oh, would you like to have Eric Roberts in the movie? And I thought, well, in my mind, I'm like, well, who wouldn't want to have Eric Roberts in the
right,
movie?
Yeah.
You know, yeah, great. Can that happen? And she's like, yeah, I think, you know, he might be open to it. Like, I know his manager, his wife, or whatnot. I'm like, okay. So you won't believe this, but of all things, he sent in a video audition for the character. Like, and so we're all just cracking up. Like, the producer's like, Eric Roberts sent a video audition, as if he has to show us like his acting talent.
We know who you are, sir. We're very familiar.
Yeah, we're good. And he like completely crushed it. And I was like, okay, even if he doesn't agree to be in this movie, I'm personally going to keep this video audition just for fun.
Yeah.
And so yeah, he said, you know, at first we're like, well, we can't afford him. Like, I don't think we can afford him. And they're like, no, he loves doing this kind of stuff. He's very affordable. Like, you'd be surprised. And so, you know, we then went down the road and was like, okay, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. And it was really fun working with him. I still think his scene is one of the better ones in the movie. It always makes me laugh, and I've seen the movie probably a couple hundred times, not in its final form, but, throughout editing.
Right. Sure. Man, and it's, so this was shot, if I'm not mistaken, on site in Las Vegas. The whole thing was shot in Las Vegas, correct?
Yes. Yeah. So we shot, so I live in Las Vegas, and we shot it entirely here. I grew up in Portland, so that's where the original comic shop was.
Okay.
But we figured if we can make it work here, I was completely open to going to LA to shoot it or wherever. But the producers are like, no, let's do it in Vegas. It'll be fun. And I really like that. I'm kind of like a Vegas booster. Like I love it here. And so I thought, well, this could be fun. Let's give it some texture of Vegas. Like, let's at least have something. But it's very much not a Vegas movie in the sense of when you think of Vegas, you think like Hangover, I feel like, or Leaving Las Vegas, or something that is very much about like the drinking, drugs, or whatever you want to say. Whereas ours is like the real boring Las Vegas, where you're in a sort of like a desolate strip mall, and there's like that sad little place that has, the poker machines on the bar, and just kind of your average place. Because believe it or not, us locals, we don't live in the hotel and casinos.
Right. unless you're what's her face from Hacks, who actually had to live in the casino for the first couple seasons.
Right.
But I like, because you think of Vegas, I think of Pawn Stores. I don't necessarily think of because there are shows like Pawn Store. I'm trying to say it correctly. Right. Pawn Stars. There we go. Which is, in my opinion, it's a very Vegas-y feel without all the glitz and glamour and the lights and the showgirls.
That's a good point. There are a lot of Pawn Stores, and the really hilarious part, don't quote me on this as far as like whether this is true or not, but one thing we've noticed is that every single time you see a pawn store, there's a vaping place like right next door. It's literally the one next to it. And every time I look for it, so if I see pawn store, I start looking around like, all right, where's the vape place? It's got to be either right next to it or maybe across the strip mall from it.
So the comic store that you guys use in this, was it an existing one that you were allowed to film in, or did you have a vacant building that you repurposed?
So that was an interesting part of the discussion that went on for quite a long time, because we started the really basic scouting and pre-production before we had anybody agree to be in the movie. And we looked at basically every comic store in Vegas. And there was a thought of like, well, if we build it, we could have more control. But then could that be a nightmare, though, on our budget to try to like put everything we need in it? Right. And so we did end up just finding a local store that agreed. And thank God the price of the main store was very reasonable, because I think we shot there for 7 or 8 days of the 15. So about half the shoot we were at this store. But then the rival store that had to be super awesome, like it had to be obviously superior, like the Death Star of comic stores, right? And so that one cost more for one day than the other place cost us to rent for 8 days.
No kidding.
But it was worth it. So it's owned by the drummer of System of a Down, the rock band.
Okay.
And so I couldn't believe this place. It's got to be the best comic store I've ever seen. If I was a kid, I would have just went nuts. You walk in, there's a life-size AT-AT that's like part of the store, and it goes into the ceiling. So like the very top of it blends to the ceiling. And then if you look at the tiles on the ceiling, there's X-Wings flying overhead, but there's also like Superman and like other characters. And they had a Silver Surfer that's like full size in there.
Oh, okay.
And they even have called like, I think it's like Arkham's Vault. And in Arkham's Vault is the comics that are up to $60,000. Like, you guys would know better than me, but like, first appearance of the Fantastic Four, so, stuff like that, where it's like, yeah, maybe it's on your dream list if you ever win the lottery.
Right. Yeah, the first appearance of the Scarecrow, Detective Comics 73, stuff like that, really high-end, super hard to find.
Right. It was neat to see, though. I loved browsing it. And as soon as we walked in, I just told the producers, I was like, this is it. I don't even care what it costs. We have to get here. We have to be able to film here for a day. And I really thought we needed 2 days in that location. But at the price, it was like, no, we have 1 day, and we're going to have to make it work. because it's better one day here than like 2 days somewhere else that isn't this amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it added a lot of production value to the movie. And it was just fun to be in. Like, even the people who are on the cast and crew who are not in the comics were totally browsing the whole store and like, man, maybe we're missing out here. This is pretty cool.
Gosh, it almost sounds like the place out in Mile High Comics in Denver. Like, that's like,
right.
To me, that's like the mothership of comics. That's why I always think of. But I've not been to this place you're describing. I think the last couple of times I've been in Vegas, I didn't get to do much outside of the stuff I was there for. So comic book shop's kind of second place for me as far as time-wise goes. But yeah, it's going to have to go on my list.
I think, and I think, by the way, they also have, if I'm not mistaken, they have 2 other locations. They're in the LA area, but it's like, I don't know, it's like Sherman Oaks, and it's not LA proper, but there's 2 that are in the greater like LA area. So that's kind of neat. When I think Mile High Comics, of course, I think that, don't they have like 11 million comics in the warehouse or something like that? And
ridiculously, it is like going into a warehouse. I mean, it's just the real tall black ceilings and just bins and bins and bins, shelves of toys. I think I spent 5 hours there, and it was just walking around looking at stuff. I don't think I even actually dug through the bins of comic books. It was insane.
That sounds so much fun.
So do you have much of a collection yourself? Do you keep a lot of stuff, or are you kind of a minimalist?
I don't, as far as comics, not really, but behind me, if anybody's, on the video, I've got a studio scale Millennium Falcon. Nice. And that was the first piece that Harrison Ford officially signed for Master Up back in the day. And it's kind of funny because it was expensive when I got it. It was like $3,000, but now these things go for like $10,000 on eBay. And I'm like, it's like a used car. I mean, I never thought it would be that way. And then on the other side of me, I've got same company, Master Up, because makes a lot of like they used to have the license. They don't now for lightsabers, like studio scale lightsabers. Okay. And so I've got one. I think this one's the Samuel L. Jackson signed one, and it's also like 24 karat gold plated. Christopher Lee signed Dooku lightsaber. So I'm a pretty big Star Wars nerd, and this is just a little piece of the collection. I did sell about half off because I'm telling you, when you get a wife and then it's a shared space, there is less space where, I lived in a condo in LA where it was floor to ceiling cabinets and everything was Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And I had this girl over on a date, and, she was very pretty and obviously not a nerd culture kind of girl, more of a party girl.
Okay.
And so she walks in, and this is just my home, so I'm very used to seeing it. And she walks in, and she's just got this look of total shock. And she's like, whoa, you really like Star Wars, huh? And I was like, yeah, it's all right. I mean, as I've got like, $100,000 in collectibles.
This is my $10,000
and that's when I realized
Falcon.
I was like,
I don't want to brag. Harrison Ford signed this. I don't want to brag, but so
right. it was a little too much. And I do think if you have too much, your eye isn't drawn to the best pieces anymore. Like it becomes maybe a little cluttered. Yeah. And so as I cut down to just the best pieces, I felt that I enjoyed them a little bit more versus like they would have Luke's A New Hope lightsaber signed by Mark Hamill. Luke's Empire Strikes Back one. How many versions of Luke's lightsaber do you really need? I mean, I feel like one is fine. And I had like 5 of them. So.
Unless that's all you're collecting are lightsabers, then it's a little different. But if you want variety, you got to kind of spread it out. Again, if you're just now tuning in, Jonathan Bowen, the writer and director of The Comic Shop, the movie, not the TV series, as I originally said. If people are going to see this, hopefully we'll find out. I know it doesn't have a date yet. 2025 release, hopefully. What do you want people to take away from this? What's the key thing you want people to see this movie? What do you want them to take away?
Yeah, absolutely. So the main takeaway, and really why I made it, is kind of to tell people that it's never too late to follow your dreams. And I think sometimes people get on a track and they're like, well, this is who I am now. This is what I do. And it's like, well, but if you had dreams when you were younger and you've reached middle age, it's still not too late.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be 80 years old looking back on your life thinking, gosh, what would have happened if? And so that's really kind of the tagline of the movie is, and I'm not saying I totally agree with this, but never have a plan B. The idea is that even if you do have a plan B, like, don't give up on those dreams, because sometimes it can take a long time to accomplish them. And how many people, even like a J.K. Rowling, right? I think she was rejected 27 times by like publishers. And how many stories are there out there like that, where if these people had just given up after a couple of tries, we would never know. We wouldn't have these things in our culture anymore. So that was really the message of the movie. It's supposed to be kind of uplifting that, you know, believe in yourself, and maybe things didn't work out in the past, but you can still try again. It's not too late. You're still alive.
Right. Yeah, just don't give up. I think that's the kind of message everyone that resonates with people across the board too. I think it's one of those, doesn't matter your race, your gender, your sex, your ethnicity, your culture, never give up, I think, is one of those universal truths. And especially nowadays, more than ever, I think we really need to hear that kind of message.
Absolutely. And I think it was something too that, you know, our Tristan, she said she's not into comics. And Jesse, on the Zoom call that we all met each other sort of for the first time, he interrupted me and said, it's not about comics. And he's right. Like, are comics a big piece of this world? Are they a backdrop? Yes, for sure. But if you don't like comics and you're really not into that, the message of the film still remains the same.
Sure.
Because my dream was never to illustrate comics, but my dream is to be a filmmaker. So I just said it in the comic world, and that message can still translate, like, whatever you want to do. Maybe you want to be an architect, and you ended up being an accountant. Well, you know, is it too late? Maybe you could still be an architect. So what? You'd be an older architect.
Right.
Better that than never trying at all.
Yeah, just like Hermes, the misfit elf, he needs to keep trying to be a dentist if that's what he really wants to be. Am I right?
Right. Exactly. That kind of thing.
I'm excited for the movie. Like I said, this hit several notes for me. Not only do I love the actors who were involved, but the comic book shop, and then just the overall message and the story of it. So we should look for this hopefully in 2025. Is there anything that people listening right now, if they're hearing this, is there anything they can do to help somehow?
You know, I guess I would say, you know, as far as talking about it, and they can follow me, Director Bowen on Instagram, which is just BOWEN, and I also have directorbowen.com where they can follow along with like any news or happenings. Mm-hmm. So if you bookmarked it, once I know a distributor, or I mean, we have a distributor, once I know the streamer, then I can actually say, hey, you know, it's going to be hitting Netflix or Showtime or Paramount Plus or whatever on this date, then just give it a watch. That's, you know, that's it. And I think people are going to enjoy it. Like, it's, you know, it's a serious movie in the sense that it has a good message, but it is also like lighthearted and has its funny moments as well. So.
And we'll put links to those if you're listening to this after the fact in the show notes. They'll be in the show notes with links to both his website and his Instagram handle. Jonathan Bowen, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for taking time on a Sunday, for being on air. Best of luck with getting a streamer for this, and we look forward to seeing the comic shop coming to in 2025.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Of course, anytime. And like I said, once it's back on, if you want to do it again, we can talk more.
Absolutely. Let's do it. That'd be great.
Great. Thank you again for your time. I appreciate it. Have a great rest of your night.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you. There he goes. Again, we'll check that movie out, The Comic Shop, the movie. And again, we'll have links to that. As soon as we know anything, too, we'll try to keep up on our socials. But make sure you follow Jonathan on his Instagram page and the website that he gave out as well. And we'll see about, well, maybe we can do a live watch party. Maybe he'll live tweet. Who knows? We'll see what we can figure out. We're going to take our next commercial break before my next guest joins me. We've got Dave Blass on deck, ready to talk about that new Star Trek Unification short that's been blowing up the internet. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio on the Big 550 KTRS. Please stand by.
Look no further. Rocks and bugs and things are here in a never-ending battle for domination, where Traposaurus fights off evil beetle, while gravel guts and bloodstone confront the buzzing menace of wicked cricket. It's rocks versus bugs, with mortals as a tasty prize. Where will the evil end? Can robots, soldiers, or heroes stop them? They're on the move and ready for action. Rocks and bugs and things from Ideal.
Throughout time, people have asked, which came first, the chicken
or the egg. Maybe it was a Manglore, like Manglore Demon. You can pretend to hatch Manglore Dragon and Manglizard, too. Each sold separately in a make-believe egg. You can stretch them, squash them, take them apart. They'll return almost like new to their original forms. So if you want to hatch up some fun, you can crack open a Manglore. The Manglores, Manglore Demon, Manglore Dragon, and Manglizard, each sold separately from Ideal.
Airlandia, the Air Raiders command post prepares for the Tyrant's Dragon Wind attack.
Hit it with everything we've got! Thunderclaw, launch! Remote missiles, flare! Hold on to your helmets, men!
Launch glider! Fire! Good shot! Launch claw! Launch storm dagger! Against the tyrants of wind! Their armies at the command post! Rock slide!
Air Raiders command post and claw and Tyrant's Dragon Wind, each complete with figures.
Mad scientist!
I've done it! It's dissect an alien, and it's...
Gross!
You take his insides out and put them back in.
Too gross.
Yuck!
That's disgusting.
He's a real slime bucket!
Yuck!
Dissect an alien. Watch for time freaks and more gross creations so you too can be a mad scientist.
Too gross.
Earth's first line of defense has a breakthrough in space technology. Magnalock.
Hi, this is Brent Spiner. You're listening to Geek to Me Radio.
Had to come back with a little Brent Spiner due to my next guest joining us here. Before we get to my guest, though, I want to make sure we tell you about our official comic book sponsor, Bugs Comics and Games. If you just heard my last guest and you're like, boy, I haven't been to a comic book shop in a while, may I suggest Bugs Comics and Games on Bryan Road in O'Fallon, Missouri. Easily accessible from either Highway 70 or from Highway 364. He's got back issues. He could easily film a movie in his store. Easily, no problem. He's got back issues, new issues, toys, games, all sorts of stuff. Anything you might want to dive into for your comic book needs, Larry at Bugs Comics has it. I've been going to him since I had to ride my bike up there well before I even had my driver's license. He's moved a couple times since then. He's now out in O'Fallon. And if you're wanting to save some money, maybe you're thinking, well, you know, money's a little tight these days. Hey, join the Avengers Club. That way you save money on your new issues, your back issues, whatever it might be you're wanting to buy. He's got toys, Pokemon cards, a little bit of everything. And that's, I've always said, what makes a good store if it's got back issues, because I like to go through the bins and rifle through and find new stuff. He's always buying too. So maybe you've gotten to that point like he was just talking about, Jonathan was just mentioning he has a lot of stuff he had to downsize. Maybe you're at that point too. In that case, give Larry a call at Bugs Comics and Games. He's always buying, and that's how I get to look through all the new issues and back issues. So it's really a win for all of us if you think about it. You can sell him your comic books, and he'll give you a really great price for that collection so that you don't feel like, you know, is this what I should have sold it for? He's not going to put any pressure on you, and he'll give you a really fair deal. Check him out on Instagram as well, Bugs Comics and AND Games. You can check out the stuff he's got there. If you're out of the Missouri area like Jonathan or like my next guest Dave, you can check him out on Instagram, see something you like, say claim. He'll send you a PayPal invoice, you pay it, and he ships it right to your door. He can be your local comic book store if your local comic book store has closed down for whatever reason that might be. Bugs Comics and Games also on Facebook as well. Check them out there. Very proud to have them as the official comic book sponsor here on Geek to Me Radio. I'm so excited to talk to my next guest. I've been obsessed with this movie since it dropped earlier this week. It's a short. If you haven't seen it, we're going to have a link to it in the show notes. And it's everyone's talking about it. My guest joins me right now, Dave Blass, production designer and art director on several projects, but also on Unification. Dave, thanks for taking the time tonight.
Thank you. Is my video working okay? Everything good?
Everything sounds good so far.
I love it. So thank you for having me on the show, and it's excited to talk to your fans about this amazing project and all the Star Trek and fun things that I do.
Yeah, I know you worked on 20 episodes, I think, of Picard as well. So were you a Trekkie growing up?
I was a massive Trekkie growing up. In fact, that was what got me into the entertainment business. So imagine going... just coming up as a kid, as a huge Trekkie, and say, Mom, Dad, I want to go to Hollywood and work on Star Trek. And they're like, sure, kid, you're an idiot. That you don't get to do that. Especially, I mean, my graduating high school class was 96 people. So I lived in the sticks. So you don't do that. So it's like the fact that I was able to do it. And at the time I came up with this stupid idea to go to Hollywood and design Star Trek. Only 2 people had ever done it before.
Yeah.
So even that was a pretty amazing thing.
And when you think about how far it's come from the 60s series, where at Desilu Productions, the stuff they did then, all the stuff they're doing now, and it kind of really culminates with the AI and the we've seen it done with, they did it with Grand Moff Tarkin and Carrie Fisher's Princess Leia in Rogue One, for example. But this was, it almost felt like next level. Has the technology just been increasing at such a level that it's grown that much in just this short 5-6 years since Rogue One came out?
So really important. We're going out of our pulling our hairs out trying to explain to people the term AI and deep fake is something that's thrown around. And it's really important for folks to realize that this was not, because AI is people sitting at a keyboard saying, make this happen, do this thing. We built sets. We were on set with actors who were in real wardrobe. We had hairstylists. So this isn't a process that is getting rid of filmmaking. Okay. It is a process that is adding to filmmaking.
Gotcha.
We like to call it digital makeup. So it's as if you were, here's the example. You watch The Penguin, and they have Colin Farrell playing the Penguin dude. He doesn't look anything at all like the final product. He looks like, he's Colin Farrell.
Yeah.
So they spend hours in the hair and makeup thing, doing prosthetics with latex and all this stuff to get him to the point of being able to play that final end character. What we did the same thing, but in a digital realm, so that our actor, Sam Witwer, is on set playing Kirk, but we're watching him live. This isn't like a post-production, go to a visual effects company later and slap someone's face on it. This is done live. So we're watching it. We're seeing Sam's portrayal of Kirk and how he's acting. And what Sam would do would be looking like in a mirror. He would play into the screen and see how his expressions would work with the Kirk digital makeup. So he would have to contort his face and do something different than what Kirk was doing in order to get the Kirk expression exactly right. Because Sam studied Shatner's mannerisms to get so when you're watching it, what hits people is it's that turn that Kirk does, and he kind of gives that look. Yeah. It's like so hard to do. You can't do that with AI, and that's why AI isn't working, because it's not performance-based. So they're just kind of taking and mashing stuff, whereas this was more of a performance-based stuff. And again, AI, when people say that in deepfake, that's like, oh, okay, we're taking some weird, we saw a lot of political ads and things like that. We're taking something, and it's the computer creating the stuff. Here, it was created by artists. It was created by actors. People like, yeah, his AI hair. I'm like, well, no, that was real hair. I mean, that's, all the different versions of Shatner's hair. But we had hair and makeup there doing it for Sam.
Yeah, and I saw Jules had on her phone, her iPhone, she put some of Sam's stuff that he did, which was, it was mind-blowing how good it was. Like I said, I'm like, did she run this for a filter? But that was just the effect that you guys were able to create.
Yep. So Jules, he's basically the head of Otoy, and just a groundbreaking individual and visionary who this is his project, and this is he wrote it. He's basically the spearhead. So he's the guy that is really the mastermind behind all of this story and telling all these things and bringing in all the Easter eggs and the different things. So and Carlos, the director, everyone, what was great was Carlos wasn't a Trekkie. He was just an amazing director. But Carlos, unlike a lot of directors that I've worked with, said, "Hey, Dave. Hey, Jules. Hey, anyone who's a Star Trek person, what is Star Trek? What do I need to know? What is the thing? What is the core value here that I need to where are the pitfalls?" And
right.
We had done there's a couple stills that we had done a scene that was deleted out with there was Spock and Savik's wedding, and he's like, "Dave, we're doing a Vulcan wedding. What do I need to know?" And I'm like, "Well, here's what you need to do." And I helped him choreograph it and worked with Robin Curtis, and I'm like, "How amazing is this? I'm getting to do Spock's wedding." But Carlos, he's like, "I know visually what I want to do, but what am I looking at?" And then we had the fingers and the doing, and so he was open to it, because he's like, "I don't know what the thing is, but you tell me what the thing is, and I'll focus on the thing, and cinematically I'll make it interesting and make it exciting." So he was really, the whole team was so great to work with, but and Sam especially, just the amount of research and watching. And there's the scene with the TOS Kirk when he turns around, and if you just look at the pose and the body language that Sam, he knew it's like that cardboard cutout that we all had in our house when we were kids, and he strikes that pose, and you're like, yeah, that's Kirk. And I've never seen anything like it. So, and again, we're watching it, in live TV. So, like, if Sam's talking to me on camera, I'm actually talking to Kirk, and it's so weird.
Wow. And it's funny you mentioned that, because Nicholas Meyer, who directed Star Trek II, famously wasn't a Star Trek guy. And that's still one of the best Star Trek movies, in my opinion, we ever got. So that's funny that the director you just mentioned, but he had that. He didn't necessarily need to know, but he seemed to have a love of wanting to make sure it was the perfect project and that it came out properly.
Yeah. And again, I've met Nicholas Meyer but he was the same thing. He went back and he's like, okay, I'm going to do the thing. Went and watched the Star Trek, and he's like, okay, Khan, that's the guy I want. Let's, but it's the characters, and that's.
Oh no, we just lost him. That's okay. We'll get him back. We're going to take a very quick commercial break while that happens. Tech problems happen from time to time. So as we take this commercial break, as we are played off by the Foo Fighters here, I want to remind you you're listening to Geek to Me Radio on the Big 550 KTRS. Please stand by.
Battle beast wood! Fire burns wood! Battle beast fire! Water puts out fire! Battle beast water! Wood beats water! Battle beast, battle for the fun of it! Just activate their battle badges.
I got fire! I got water! Water beats fire!
Battle beast!
Wood! Fire! Fire beats wood!
Battle beast can grow into an army! Collect all 84. Battle beast!
Yo, Burgundy, chew on this.
You'll never cut the mustard, mean winner!
Food fight!
Your history, Private Pizza! Pow! And your lunch! Combat curtain! Fire!
What's going on?
Joy slammed this food again, Mom.
Food fighters, figures in combat carton each sold separately. Toys do not walk and talk.
A new racing team is shifting into gear.
Hi, this is Nichelle Nichols, and you're listening to Geek to Me Radio.
Technical stuff happens, just like when you're doing a live Broadway show or whatever. The show must go on. So we've got Dave on the phone here. Before we go back to Dave, I want to really quickly make sure we tell you about our premier sponsor, the Greater St. Charles Convention and Visitors Bureau. You know them from the website, discoverstcharles.com. Next, or I should say this coming weekend, it's not even next weekend anymore, this coming weekend, right after Thanksgiving on Black Friday, they kick off the longest running and largest Christmas festival in the country. How long, you ask? This is their 50th season. So if you want to get out there, you can sing songs and carols with people dressed in different period style. There'll be the USO Evergreens, who are dressed in their World War II style outfits. There'll be the Cobblestone Wassailers dressed in Victorian clothing, singing period pieces, all the way up to the Singing Snowmen, who do barbershop quartet renditions of your favorite Christmas carols and songs. Not to mention the international gift givers. If you're from Italy, you might want to go talk to La Befana, find out why you didn't get those coins in your shoes like you wanted last year. Or if you're feeling a little bit naughty, Friday nights, not this first Friday night, but after that, Friday nights, Krampus takes over, and you can go visit Krampus on Krampusnacht and visit the Kali Konstroy, the Mary Lloyd. They dig into Christmas traditions. That's in the name, of course, but they really get into the heart of all these different things. So you'll find like probably 10 different international Santas. You'll be able to talk to Jack Frost and Susie Snowflake. You'll be able to get hot wassail from the Maids of Milken. It is this gorgeous, picturesque town with the cobblestone streets where you feel like you just stepped into a Dickensian novel. Put it on your bucket list. Make sure you check it out. If you're going to do it, this is the year to do it too. Start your trip at the website, discoverstcharles.com. That's discoverstcharles.com. Click on the Christmas Traditions page for more information about that event. Whether you're from out of town, like Dave, who's joining us, or maybe you're local and haven't made the trip over there lately, plan your trip. Start at the website, discoverstcharles.com. That's discoverstcharles.com. As we always say, it's an historically good time. Back joining us on the phone, we have production designer and art director Dave Blass. We were talking about Unification. It's amazing, too, that William Shatner was part of this, too. It wasn't just Sam. It was also William Shatner.
Correct. Yeah. So William Shatner was involved in the project, and he was an executive producer of the show. And he's basically, it's like this is a project done by fans. And again, the people who are doing this show look at Mr. Shatner, and he's like an icon. And I've had the opportunity to spend quality time with the guy on the bridge of the old original TOS Enterprise.
I saw the pictures. I'm so jealous.
And he is just such. It's one of those things that they say, don't meet your idols. And it's just, I was so nervous, and just the warmest, nicest fellow ever. And, but he was involved in the show. And, and again, that was the whole thing. Again, it's not this, they're stealing the rights of the actors and the things. Everyone who was involved, their families and everyone was part of it. So they knew what we were doing. The Nimoy estate knew what we were doing. So it was the thing. It was like, we're showing love to people. We're not trying to take their rights and whatever. So, Mr. Shatner was very excited to be a part of the show, and again, we worked with him. We put him back on the bridge of the Enterprise refit. I built a captain's chair for him, and we did a whole interview with him on the bridge of the old ship as well. So he's been very helpful with us on the Roddenberry archives, and just an amazing fellow.
And I know Sam is no slouch. I mean, the live action and the voiceover work he's done speaks for itself. Did he get some interaction? Was William Shatner giving him some pointers, or did they not have that interaction before they actually started filming?
Mr. Shatner was not on set. Sam was portraying all versions of Kirk.
Right. I didn't know if William Shatner was able to give him some pointers, like, "Hey, I probably would have stood differently." Did Sam get to have some interaction and get some pointers from Mr. Shatner?
Yes, I'm sure. Actually, I would have to ask Sam on that. It's like when we were there, we were deep into the final scene with the. Because I'm always as a designer, you're very seldom sitting there on set getting to enjoy it. You're always running around doing the next thing.
Yeah.
And I was luckily spending a lot of time setting up the final scene with Spock and Kirk and building the bed and doing all that other fun stuff.
Wow, and it was so good to see Robin Curtis come back, because she, I always think of Kirstie Alley first played the role of Saavik, but Robin Curtis did such a great job taking over in Star Trek 3 and 4. It was so nice to see her back. That was wonderful.
She's amazing too, and I've become very friends with her over the last 3 years. She goes to a lot of the conventions, and again, she was actually inside Ticonderoga with Bill Shatner when we were there. So it's like literally spending, the first time you meet Saavik is on the bridge of the Enterprise. And but she's just such the warm and amazing personality. So I really encourage people to try, and if they see her at a convention, go talk to her, because she's just amazing. And her portrayal, she brings the gravitas to the show. And I think that was it, having her there, and it tied it all together, because it wasn't just about Kirk and Spock. It's about the whole legacy of the show. And a lot of people have said, well, why wasn't McCoy there? I'm like, well, because we're trying to put a thread of a moment between, and it's kind of hard when you're weaving all these things. We can't do a 20-minute story. Right. We're trying to say we're tying these two people together, and it's the unification of these two people whose endings the fans didn't necessarily always like. And I think that, Mr. Shatner went on to do a book series about, and we actually got a lot of flack on Picard about this for having, there's at the beginning of Unification, you see a graphic of a body, and that's the graphic we created for Star Trek Picard, where we show that Section 31 went and reclaimed his body from Veridian 3 and has it in stasis. So much like Picard, his body was kept there, and then he's then brought back to life and all that. So it's that whole idea of like what actually happened and how did it. But it's the idea that it's like, yes, the technology will get to the point where we can resurrect people, but to sit there and say, well, how do we get bones and how, so yeah, it became a much bigger story.
Yeah. And I mean, we've only got about 10 minutes left, and I got to apologize, Dave, because I've got several notes here about different projects you've worked on that I want to talk about, from Dusk Till Dawn to The Boys to Preacher to Last Comic Standing, that I want to ask you about. We've only got about 10 minutes left. I want to ask you, though, because I was curious, how long from conception of this idea for this short to when it dropped last week, how long was the process?
It's several years, and again, it's important that the fans go to the Otoy website on YouTube, and you can see this isn't the first video. This has been an ongoing thing. So there's, I believe, this is the fourth video in the series. So it's kind of been building up, and with that, the technology has changed. So it's kind of a story of all of the, that builds to this thing. And the last one was the rescuing of the Enterprise saucer off Meridian 3, which then ties into Picard. So it's been several years at least.
Wow. And again, we're going to put a link to that. If you're listening to this after the fact in the podcast form, scroll down to the bottom of the page. We'll have that link to the Roddenberry archive so you can see this incredible video. If you haven't seen it yet, which I find hard to believe because so many people have watched this, did you expect it to blow up as much as it did?
No one did. And it's like, it's like with anything we do. We think we did a good job, but then to see, and this is one of those things that people are shooting the reaction videos, and I'm tearing up because I'm watching all these very bitter podcasters who are like, I hate I'm fine. Everyone's talking about it. I'll have to watch it. And then they watch it. And then it's like, there were tears by the end. They're like, okay, you got me. And it's like, to see that is just so, it's so beautiful, and it makes us all feel good. It's like, oh, okay, we did it right. And, it's like doing that with Star Trek: The Next Generation. I have people who are like, when I saw the Enterprise D again, and I cried, and the crew back on the thing, I'm like, the fact that you make, as a Star Trek fan, lifetime Star Trek fan, to sit there and say, yeah, the last two things I did was make a bunch of Star Trek people cry because we did our job so well.
Yeah, and then, like I said, there's so much we could talk about just on your work on Picard, too, that you've done. But I was so overwhelmed. Like I said, my dad got me into watching Star Trek when I was young, and he took me. The first movie I got to see in theaters was Star Trek 3, The Search for Spock. As a very young kid, he took me to see this movie. This series meant so much to him. And then when he passed, my mom took me to see the subsequent Star Trek 5 and 6 because she knew what a bond I had with my dad. So it is so emotional to talk about it and to see what you guys have done. It's just, I'm starting to tear up now. It's
what's fascinating is your previous guest, I was listening to him, and he said the exact speech that I gave to a young art director the other night, who was asking me, what advice would you give? And I said, don't come up with a plan B. If you give up with a plan B, give up on plan A, because you just did. You got to just stick with it. You got to go forward, because at one point, and you kind of racked off some horrible memories and good memories, but like Last Comic Standing, I was the production designer on Biggest Loser. When you're sitting there going, I'm working on The Biggest Loser or Beauty and the Geek, I'm not sitting there going, yeah, I'm living the dream, and because I came to Hollywood to do Star Trek. And it's like, but I'm doing this, and you just keep going, keep moving, believe in yourself and believe in the dream, and then eventually it will happen. But if I didn't get through all those hard times, I wouldn't have gotten to Star Trek Picard and be able to do all these things. So stick with it, follow your dreams, but just keep your head down and realize that it's not going to be easy. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it.
Exactly. Just a few minutes left. I do want to cover a couple things. I was curious, just as a layman, some of the stuff we worked on in the art department, there are different titles like Last Comic Standing, Designer, Original Logo, From Dusk Till Dawn 3, Production Designer, Additional Photography, Shades of Grey, Property Master. That all kind of falls under the art department umbrella. Is there one job under that umbrella that you liked the most? Was there just kind of a next rung in the ladder to kind of improve your craft?
Well, production designer, clearly, because you're the head of it. You have the most say in the most things. I mean, I always look back on things. People are like, oh, you did Last Comic Standing. I'm like, no, I was on a show called Dog Eat Dog, and they asked me to do a logo for something that they were doing, and then they took my logo, didn't pay me, but I got a credit for it. And I'm like, so I just did a $2,000 logo for you guys, and you guys. I'm like, but yeah, all good. But those, again, you learn. Lessons you learn.
And the other question I had from you for a technical standpoint is some of the stuff you've worked on. I was curious, when you do art direction, you're not brought on for a series. You might do 1 episode of Harry's Law, 4 episodes of ER. Is that standard, or is it kind of like you're coming in to assist with something else? How does that work for each project, just like a couple episodes here and there?
Yeah, well, a friend of mine, Charlie Lagola, who I've worked with for years, he was the designer on ER. And ER, their whole art department, for like the design department, was 3 people. So when they would do a big episode, like, oh, we have the one of the ones I did was a giant snow episode. I would come in and do that, or I would same thing for Harry's Law. He needed a hand on that. And he's like, here, come out and help me do 1 or 2 episodes. Or sometimes happens as a designer. I did Amazing Stories for Steven Spielberg, and each episode was production designed by a different person. So, or you do the pilot of a show like Quantico that I did, and you just do the first episode, and we don't know when they do the show if it's going to get picked up. Then it gets picked up, and it goes somewhere else, and they hire other people. So you never can tell. Or the same thing happened with the series. It's like I did the first season of The Boys, and then went to go do Ghost Rider for Marvel. So life changes, and you move on.
And with Unification out and being such a just smash hit over the top, are there plans for any other ones in the same vein? Or is this kind of like, no, this is a crowning moment for us, for the Star Trek fans, for everything. Let's let that lie and do something different. Where do you go from here, I guess?
That's really up to Jules. And I think that everyone is really savoring the moment and realizing how important what we did was. And I didn't, people thought we did good. But to have it to the, and then, in fact, when I watched it for the first time, I'm sitting there bawling. I'm like, and Carlos, the director, he's like, "Is that a real cry?" Or I'm like, "Dude, shut up, just go away." I'm like, you nailed it. It's like, because I'm looking at the imperfections of my work and whatever, but I'm like, no, you hit the core thing. And Michael's score, because Michael did the score for the JJ movie, the 2008 Star Trek as well. So that was a huge get to get him to do it. So, what's next? Who knows? So I'm on my way to Atlanta for a new project for Hulu, and I'm very excited about that. It's not a Star Trek project, but it's different, and I always love working with new people, and it's very exciting. So I do a lot of different things, because you go from a show like Justified to a show like The Boys or Preacher. It allows you to express your emotions and your feelings and your artistic vision in different ways.
Yeah, and just on the note for Preacher, I was having this conversation with somebody the other day that sometimes American television shows go on longer than they should. Preacher had a nice run. They ended it well. That was such a good show. I loved watching that on AMC, and I think it went out on a high note, just my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I think that my other favorite is Justified, and if Paramount Plus had a thing, they'd pick up Justified and slot it in as soon as Yellowstone's over, because it has very much the same vibe. For a while, I was doing the modern day cowboy from Justified to Longmire, so that was kind of my niche. But then, here I am doing spaceships.
Yeah, the final frontier, as it were. So going from cowboys to starships. If people want to keep up with you more online, find out more about your projects, what are the best ways people can keep track? Is it X, Instagram, Threads? Where are you?
You can keep track with me on X. It's Dave Blass, or you can go, if you're really into pop culture, you can go onto my Instagram, Dave Blass Photography, where you can watch me take photos of a lot of headbangers and rock stars, because that's my little side hustle.
Very cool. We'll make sure to follow that as well. It's been a delight. I really appreciate you jumping on, especially last minute like this. I'm so glad we're able to talk about this while this is fresh in people's minds, and hopefully we can have you on again soon.
Sounds great.
Thanks. Be well. Take care. Have a good rest of your night.
Bye.
There he goes. Wow, it's so exciting to have someone like that on who just, because this hit me, I'm telling you, and I know a lot of you are the same if you're listening right now. And let me address that too. The chats, we've got the Restream has a new interface, so the chats aren't showing up for me at all. I actually went to the chats. They're not showing up for all of you who think I'm ignoring you in the chats. I'm not. We're going to have to figure this out somehow. The new Restream interface is rubbish. So we'll figure that out, hopefully get it sorted, or I'll have another screen up where I can watch the chat. So I know Joey said the chats were going off the hook. Thank you to all of you. I wasn't ignoring you. I just didn't know how to access it. But thank you very much to Jonathan Bowen. Make sure you check out the comic shop when it's released on streaming in 2025. And to Dave Blass, if you haven't had a chance to see that video, my goodness, do yourself a favor and go to the link, the Roddenberry Archives, and check it out. Be sure to check out Two Rivers Comic Con. That's the new Comic Con that I'm one of the co-owners of, bringing to St. Charles, Missouri. We've got a lot of cool comic book talent and the voice cast of the Justice League coming in. Next week, stay tuned. I've got my interview with Mira Sorvino talking about her career, as well as Dave Animal talking about season 2 of The Lioness. And we're going to have a couple other surprises in there, too. Thank you, as always, to Joey V for making the show sound and look as good as it does. That's replacing me for December, so when I go out there, and, as Dan says, my Belschnickel gig. So thank you all for listening tonight, and until next week, my friends.
This is Geek to Me Radio. That's a show.